It's time for Hall of Fame broadcaster Al Bernstein to interact with some of the most fascinating big-name guests from the world of boxing and well beyond. Here's Al.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to the show. I'm delighted you joined us because on this one, we're going to go a little bit beyond the scope of the world of boxing to interview someone who is a fan of boxing and has been involved in it in many respects, even though you know him from a different endeavor. It's Holt McCallany, the fine actor who has been in over 40 films, played the lead in Lights Out, a series on FX about a boxing heavyweight, and was in the hit series Mindhunter, and currently can be seen in the Guy Ritchie movie Wrath of Man. Holt is a terrific guy, and what interests me about him is that his passion for the sport of boxing is so immense, and he has had so many interactions with people within the sport. And I was privileged to get a chance to meet him and get to know him, and invited him on the show. And here is my chat with Holt McCallany. Holt, first of all, I can't tell you how much I appreciate you taking the time to do this.
It's a pleasure, Al. As I said to you, in the past, I've been a fan for a long time, so it's very nice to be with you.
Well, this is great, and one of the reasons I wanted to have you on, of course, this show is very boxing oriented, and while we are going to talk about your career from an artistic standpoint, I want to talk about your love of boxing and your involvement with the sport, which has been really remarkable. You actually learned to box as a young man and continued to do it really your whole life, haven't you?
Well, I love it. I wish I had more time to do it, right at this stage in my life. The pandemic would have been perfect for me if the gyms somehow stayed open. Do you know what I mean? But they also, not only did I not have a shooting schedule, but then they closed the gyms. But I've been training recently with a very good undefeated welterweight named Brian Sabayo. And Brian, I've been working with Brian, and that's been going well. And previously, I got to work with the great Mark Breland.
Yeah.
And even the legend, Teddy Atlas. I was in the gym with Teddy when I was when I was doing the pilot for Lights Out, a television show I did where I played a fighter. And my brother won the Golden Gloves, when we were kids, and I used to pick on my little brother, but once he won the gloves, it became, do you know what I mean? It became dice here. So I figured, I better try to step up my game a little bit. But no, look, it's a very exciting sport, and I've been a fan since I was a boy. So it's been wonderful for me, to be able to be around boxing and to be in a few films and television shows that were boxing related, and to have a lot of friends in the boxing community.
Yeah, you do indeed. And let's talk about the how boxing has intersected with your professional career. You mentioned Teddy Atlas. You played Teddy Atlas. You played him in the movie about Mike Tyson. And that's where you guys got to be friends. How did he help you prepare to play him?
Oh, look, his input was crucially important. And, I think part of the reason that we've been friends for nearly 30 years now is because, of that initial interaction. What happened was, it's an interesting story, Al. I got a call from a casting director that I really like, named Natalie Hart. And she was gonna cast this movie for HBO about Mike Tyson. And she called me up and she said, "Hey, would you like to play Kevin Rooney?" And I was like, I don't think I can play. Have you seen Kevin Rooney, Natalie? I don't really look like Kevin Rooney. I said, but who I could play maybe is Teddy Atlas. Would they let me audition to be Teddy Atlas? And she said, but Teddy Atlas is only going to be one scene in the movie. I said, that's all right. So I'll be in the movie for one scene. I was a young actor. I'm not, if it's a good project and I like the character, it was not the time in my life or my career. Do you know what I mean? It was about, but it turned into a much bigger part because of Teddy's input. Because the first thing he said, I called him, I said, look, Mr. Atlas, I'm an actor, I'm going to play you in a film. I'd like to meet with you. At the time, it was an exciting time, actually, to be around Teddy Atlas, because he had two great heavyweights. He had Michael Moorer.
Right.
This is 1993, right? So Moorer fights for the title and beats Holyfield in April of 94. So at the time, Teddy invited me. My first meeting with him, he said, come to the House of Pain. It was a gym in New Jersey. I think West Orange, New Jersey, where he was training at that time, Shannon and Michael. Right. And so I got to be, so right away, you step in and you're on the top echelon of the sport.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? Michael, was heavyweight champion of the world just a few months later. Do you know what I mean?
Heady stuff.
Yeah, heady stuff. For me, it certainly was. And then also, Teddy, took the time to explain to me a little bit more about the dynamic between him and Mike Tyson, between him and Customato, between Mike Tyson and Customato, and what the circumstances were in Catskill during that period. And as Tyson started to grow in importance, and was acting out. Do you know what I mean? And volumes have been written. Do you know what I mean? About about that whole thing. But you see, and although I knew some of it, I didn't know all of it, and I didn't have a nuanced understanding of it. And so he gave me that, and I shared that with the director when I got to, believe it or not, it's a film that takes place in Catskill, New York, but we shot it in Los Angeles, California. And
Go figure.
Right. And immediately the part grew. As soon as I said to the director, a German director named Uli Edel, who also did Last Exit to Brooklyn, right? If I remember correctly. So I started telling him, about my conversations with Teddy, and then the writer came over, and then the scenes started to grow, and then the famous confrontation between Teddy, and Michael, and all that stuff, and it became a much bigger part. And one of the things that was really great for me also about that show was, in the role of Customato, was the legendary actor George C. Scott. And it just so happens that George's eldest son Matthew was an old and dear friend of mine, and when my father won a Tony Award on Broadway as a producer for the first Irish play, my father was Irish, to win top honors on Broadway, George C. Scott presented him with the award.
Wow.
So I had this sort of connection to George, and then the whole thing that went down, with everything that happened with Teddy, and so it was a successful shoot for me, and it led to a lot of other possibilities. As a matter of fact, Al, we're actually developing a project that's based around Teddy's life. All of these, years later. It's been a long time in gestation. He's got a very interesting history. I'm sure you know all about it. He's a very well-known guy, in boxing, and we're talking about doing an 8-part limited series that would cover all of that territory. Do you know what I mean? From, the early portion of his life, the time in Catskill with Customato, with Mike Tyson, coming down to New York, being a trainer in Gleason's gym, working with guys like Johnny Vitarosa and Chris Reed and Donnie Lalonde. Do you know what I mean? All of that stuff, and all the way, to Moorer. And
that will be fascinating for sure. And that role was not the last one you would play, of course, in boxing. And one role that you're very well known for is your role in Lights Out, the FX series, in which you played an aging heavyweight. And of course, your affinity for boxing and the fact that you do it helped you a lot. And you had some interesting comments I saw about doing fight scenes and how you feel how they need to be really meticulously choreographed to make sure they're effective and safe.
Well, absolutely, but you want them to be exciting.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, that was an old Customato-ism, right? It's like, you want to be a good fighter, but you also want to be exciting.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So you try to choreograph, fights from that perspective, and you borrow from famous fights, and great fighters and great moments in fights.
Yeah, and did you think when you were playing that role, did you think of any actual boxers that informed you on this character, or was he so uniquely different that there wasn't anyone to even look at?
No. I mean, it's funny. My friend Teddy once said to me that my boxing style, such as it is, and there's, let's just say, a lot of room for improvement. But there was an Australian light heavyweight champion named Jeff Harding.
Yes.
I don't know if you remember Jeff Harding.
I do remember him.
You know what I mean? He was an exciting guy to watch. Later on in his life, he had some personal problems. You know what I mean? But I believe he's a two-time light heavyweight champion of the world, if I'm not mistaken. Yes. So that's an impressive accomplishment. I mean, obviously, I watched all the old Irish guys. You know what I mean? The Jerry fights. You know what I mean? I watched all of my friend Jerry Cooney's fights. And I was training in the gym I shared a trainer at one time with John Duddy, the dairy.
Another great Irish fighter. Yeah, terrific.
Another great Irish fighter.
You had some people to look at, that's for sure.
I had some people to look at, but also remember, the kind of people that I had advising me and coaching me. I'm talking about guys like Mark Breland, who, is an Olympic gold medalist and widely considered the greatest amateur fighter of all time, a two-time champion of the world, and he went on from training me. His next fighter was Deontay Wilder. So it's a little bit of a step up.
I like to feel that it wasn't that big a movement up, Holt.
It's nice of you. It's nice of you to say it, but they gave me their time, and their wisdom, and I tried to soak up as much as I could.
And you also actually had an amateur bout in which you.
I did, yeah.
The USA Amateur has a senior division. My friend Mario Lopez has done that, and you, in fact, did that. That had to be a grand experience. I was going to do that. I boxed amateur many, many years ago, and I was going to do that. I never got around to it, but I'm glad you did.
Well, look, I'd like to do it again. Bruce Silverglade, who owns Gleason's Gym, has a charity called Give a Kid a Dream. You know what I mean? And he works with, some of them are terminally ill kids, and you know what I mean? And kids that are very, and so part of the proceeds was to benefit, that organization. And also it was fun for me, if you hang around a boxing gym long enough and you go in there every day, it's only a question of time before one of the trainers turns to you and says, I think you're ready for an amateur fight. And then, you've been sparring. And look, I had the benefit on a certain level of sparring guys who were a lot younger than me, because that's who was there. Do you know what I mean? There wasn't a lot of guys. That's who was there. So you're always in there with guys that are a little faster. Do you know what I mean? Guys that are, and so when I finally got in the ring, and I asked Bruce Silverglade, it's so funny, Al, I said, can I ask one favor, Bruce? Could I be first up? Could my fight? Because, I just didn't want to wait around in the locker room, and you know what I mean? Because, look, I read a fascinating quote recently with Sugar Ray Robinson, and he said, if you don't feel fear before you go into a fight, then you should find something else to do. Mm-hmm. Do you know what I mean? Because that's there for a reason, right? That was Sugar Ray Robinson. So anyway, so I asked Bruce to put me first, and he put me dead last out of 19 fights. So for 19 fights, I sit around, but that's all right. And so then I got in there, and I was and still am a kind of one-dimensional. So I wanted to be moving forward. Do you know what I mean? And and also you never really know how big a puncher a guy is until you're Do you see what I mean? And it varies wildly, and even among sparring partners. Do you know what I mean? It varies. So what I discovered in the first like 30 seconds of the bout was that my opponent was comfortable going back. That actually, was sort of, I mean, but I was able to move him back. And also when he hit me, it was not as hard as many of the sparring partners that I had trained with at Gleason's gym prior to the match. Do you see what I mean? So all of a sudden, I became relaxed. I wasn't, but you're still very alert.
Sure.
And then 3 rounds, it's only a 3-round fight, but your adrenaline is pumping, and when it's your first few fights, I think there's a tendency, you want to, you can get tired even after 3 rounds.
That's
I know
right.
it doesn't. And I was in really good shape, and I didn't get tired, but and I won the fight, but I was very glad that I had trained as much as I had.
Absolutely.
He was good,
the amateur boxing, people have a misnomer. I remember many, many years ago when I had my 30 or 40 amateur fights, no matter how good shape I was in, that nervousness and that anxiety literally takes energy away from you a little bit. So even a 3-round fight can test your durability.
Right.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like a grand experience, and I'm glad that you had it.
Well, thank you very much, Al. Yeah, it was. I enjoyed it. I may do it again.
Holt, very few actors that I can think of have had as diverse roles as you have. In your long career, you have literally played a wide breadth of characters. Is part of that by design to challenge yourself as an actor?
Yeah, well, it's funny. You read a script out, and you have to be honest with yourself about whether or not you feel a connection to a particular. Do I seem right for this part? Do I feel right? When I read this guy, do I see parts of myself in him? You know what I mean? Because the character is always going to be born out of you. Do you know what I mean? Orson Welles,
right.
Used to say, do you know what I mean?
Some part of it's organic, even if it's not you.
Well, you remove the parts about yourself that don't correspond to the character that you wish to create, and what will remain is the character. So it's always in here. You're never searching for it out there. But that doesn't mean that you can't play characters that are very different to yourself because of the way they allow themselves to experience things that are already, So yeah, I was attracted to different kinds of parts, and so I've had the opportunity, to play a wide variety of roles, and that's part of what keeps the job so fun and interesting.
Yeah, I would imagine. And in the last few years, you have played a character that you talked about how you play characters that don't necessarily embody everything about you. While you are a very fit man who, as we've talked about, likes to box and train, and yet in the last couple of years, you have gained a lot of acclaim playing an overweight, chain-smoking detective on Mindhunter.
Right.
So that really, in addition to embodying a different character, you had to feel different physically to do it.
Well, you make a determination, about what, who this guy would be, to who you feel he is. When I played Lights Leary, on FX, he's a former champion, and even though you do see former champions sometimes who do get very heavy or out of shape, or when they stop training, you do see that. But you also see examples of guys who try to keep themselves, trim and stuff. But with Mindhunter, I didn't feel that way, Al. He's as you said, a chain smoking, hard drinking, FBI detective in the 70s, who spends most of the time on the road and eats nothing but, bad food, and and his only exercise is an occasional round of golf. So it didn't seem to me that that character needed to be, in great shape. It's something they call
No,
dead.
yeah,
But then you got to be able to drop it.
right.
I'm like
Yeah.
right now as I'm speaking to you, I would say right now I'm about 205. So I'm like 25 pounds lighter, you know what I mean, than
Sure.
I was on the show. And it could be more than 25, to be honest.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. You in season number 2 of Mindhunter, you got to explore Bill's character a little bit more, which I've seen you talk about how gratifying that is, and how happy you are that David Fincher and the writers let you do that. Not all cop shows allow you to examine the characters, do they?
No, they really don't. And it's funny, that's part of the really exciting thing about television when it's really good, is that there's more real estate out. We had 2 seasons of Mindhunter. We had 19 episodes of Mindhunter. That's a lot of time to develop a character. There isn't enough time in a 2-hour movie or a 3-hour play to really explore in that kind of detail the types of things that we got into. So yeah, I was very lucky to be in such a great show. This show was critically acclaimed, all over the world, and it was one of the best experiences of my life. But I don't smoke. Do you know what I mean? Even though I smoke constantly, on the television show, and people will say, "Well, are they phony cigarettes?" No, they're real cigarettes, because the organic ones, they don't burn the same on film. They don't look the same. And well, are you really smoking? And I'm like, yeah, the camera is right here. Do you know what I mean? So yes, you're smoking. And our director, David Fincher, is someone who is known for doing a lot of coverage and a lot of takes. So it's not just a question of smoking for a few minutes and then you're moving on to the next scene. We may spend 2 days in one scene or 3. Right? So, and once something is set in rehearsal, for the editor, you don't want to make, do you know what I mean? It's been yes, a scene can continue to grow and you find things. But generally speaking, if I took a big drag of the cigarette before I said something to Charles Manson, they're going to want me to do that on subsequent takes. So you learn as time goes on, you know what I mean, to be a little bit judicious, because sometimes I would be dizzy, you know what I mean, like nauseous from the smoking. So,
yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah.
Oh, that's crazy. Now you're speaking about Mindhunter in the past tense. It would be malpractice of me to sit here and interview you and not ask whether you think that Mindhunter could ever return in some fashion.
Well, Al, I mean, look, I really think that if Mindhunter does not return, it's a shame, because it's not easy to make a show that that people really respond to the way they responded to Mindhunter. It's not an easy thing to do, and if it were easy, more people would do it.
Yeah,
do you know what I mean? People really like the show. So my hope is that it will return at some point. But it's a decision. It's a decision for Netflix, obviously, and for my friend David Fincher. And I just need to remain available if I can. Do you see? Because if I sign on to another show and it's a multi-year deal, then I wouldn't even be free to do the thing if they called. You know what I mean? So it would need to happen soonish, I think, realistically. Yeah.
Well, even just the hope will make all the Mindhunter fans feel a little bit better. Your co-star in Mindhunter, Jonathan Groff, shares in common with you and your great mother,
Julie Wilson.
Julie Wilson, who was a wonderful, wonderful actress, Tony nominee, and also the best cabaret performer perhaps of all time. I was a big fan of hers.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
lovely. So it was extraordinary. And Jonathan Groff, who plays your partner in this very serious
Mhm.
police story, is a Tony-nominated musical comedy performer, and yet you two have bonded so well. And I'm wondering if even part of that experience with your mom makes you kind of gravitate to him, and the fact that you are a music lover as well.
That's such an interesting question, Al. I promise you, nobody has ever asked me anything like that. It's a fascinating question. Yeah, my mother was a nightclub singer and a Broadway actress, and Jonathan is a wonderful singer and a very accomplished Broadway actor. His last show, Hamilton, do you know what I mean, was a pretty big hit.
I think I heard of that.
And he of course was nominated for a Tony Award for King George. Which he's brilliant in the thing. He was nominated for Spring's Awakening, his first show. I think that's what it is. So he's he's definitely from that world, and those kinds of very dark, very gritty police dramas. It was in some ways new territory for Jonathan.
Yes.
But he's such a gifted actor that there's nothing you can really throw at Jonathan. You know what I mean? That he can't handle.
Right.
And we kind of hit it off almost from the start. At the end of my mother's life, my mother, thank you for saying that, Al, was a well-known nightclub singer in New York City, they did a memorial for her. And what I discovered, Al, was that at the end of my mother's life, I realized that nothing gave her more pleasure than when I would get up and sing one of her old songs.
And you're a very good singer, by the way.
Well, thank you. Anyway, I'm not. Jonathan is the singer, but anyway, so Jonathan and I did a duet at my mom's memorial. We sang "That's Life," the famous Sinatra song, and Jonathan forgot his words, but that's okay.
Yes.
Because he's great, even if he forgets his words. But no, we had people talk about chemistry. I don't know. You want two leads that complement each other, and Jonathan and I are so different. In the way that we look, we're just different guys. We're different ages. We just have a very different quality on film, and I think that it made us interesting together. And then we were also able to play off each other and find. Wish this wouldn't keep dinging. And find ways to find the humor in the scenes.
Well, the two of you are magic together. Holt, I really, really appreciate you taking the time to do this with me. I'm a great admirer of your work, and when you and I got to meet each other at the boxing match, and I got to see you, I understood why all my boxing friends that know you speak so highly of you.
Well, it's nice of you to say it, Al. I look forward to seeing you at the future fights. This was a great experience. So, have a great day. Thanks for having me.
So that was my conversation with Holt McCallany. And in addition to all the boxing talk that we did, which was fascinating, in his career as an actor in so many shows and movies, I got a kick out of talking to him about his mom, Julie Wilson, who was one of the great cabaret performers of all time, and I think he appreciated her being referenced. But as I bring in my co-host, Trip Mitchell, who's going to help me, among other things, answer the questions that you sent us on Twitter, at Al Bernstein. Trip, the show that so many people know Holt from is Mindhunter, which was quite an intriguing drama.
Mindhunter was one of the best shows I've ever seen, and it passes a big test. My wife, as you know, was a police officer for 10 years and then was a federal prosecutor, worked with the FBI every day, and she said this was super realistic, super smart, and super fun to watch. So that's 3 stars from her, which our show has only gotten 1 star,
yeah,
and that's
right.
when you're on. So
exactly,
we're happy.
Yeah. Really, we're not. We have 2 stars left to go before we can even get close to that. But that is high praise from somebody that is in the, that knows, because that's the thing when shows are are about a certain industry or about a certain endeavor, the people that are in it often don't find it credible. So that's pretty good.
Let's get to the questions, Al. Joy Deep asks, how impressed were you by the Inoue fight, and will he fight the winner of Donaire Casimero coming up next?
Inoue was spectacular in his win. They don't call him a monster for nothing. He was a monster in that fight, winning by knockout with a terrific body punch. And he is clearly one of the best 3 or 4 pound-for-pound fighters in the world today. Now, will he rematch with Nonito Donaire if he beats Jonriel Casimero in a terrific fight that's coming up that we're going to have on Showtime in August? And is that possible? Well, I think it is possible. I know the boxing gods and boxing politics don't lend themselves to that because Inoue is promoted by a different promoter than Donaire and Casimero are with. But Donaire did fight him already, and Casimero was slated to fight him. So I think that fight can be made, that fight would have happened, but for injury. So I think that there's a good chance that Inoue will fight the winner of that fight, and I think that is spectacular for the bantamweight division.
Fantastic. And let's go up a few pounds. Joshua, this comes from Darren Boyd, by the way. Joshua looks too big and too strong for Usyk. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, Alexander Usyk is a very, very fine fighter, one of the best cruiserweights of all time. Has not looked as impressive as a heavyweight as I think people anticipated, mostly because he hasn't really shown off his boxing skills as much as he did as a cruiserweight. And for him to be effective as a heavyweight, he's going to have to do that. Now, he's gotten through his tests so far, but Joshua may be a different story. He is big and powerful, and unless Usyk can box perfectly in that fight, I see Joshua winning. I just think he is, in fact, too big and too powerful for him.
Evander Holyfield, when he came up from a cruiserweight, he did a great job of adapting to the heavyweights, didn't he?
Yeah, he did, and the heavyweights were a little smaller back then, which helped him a little bit, although then ultimately he had to face big heavyweights like Lennox Lewis and others, and Riddick Bowe. But he did. He used his combination punching and his hand speed as a big weapon for him, and ultimately that was what made him a special heavyweight.
Sure, and at the end of his career, you and I saw him fight the South African Botha, and I think he came in at 230 then, but he was a great fighter in the 190s and fun to watch.
Yeah, for sure.
Matt De La Rosa asks, what era of heavyweight boxing, in your opinion, had the deepest talent pool? The 70s or the 90s?
Well, given those two choices, I'm definitely going to pick the 70s because that was the era that had Muhammad Ali, George Foreman, Joe Frazier, Kenny Norton, Ernie Shavers, Ron Lyles, Jerry Corey, the list goes on and on. And even at the end of the decade, Larry Holmes made his entrance as heavyweight champion with that phenomenal fight that he and Kenny Norton put on in the late 70s, in which Holmes very narrowly won the heavyweight championship. It was an extraordinary decade for the heavyweight division. And when you think also that the Thrilla in Manila fight between Frazier and Ali was in the 70s, that was pretty extraordinary as well. So I'm going to pick that. Mike Tyson, of course, made his debut in the 90s, and that was when he became champion. And, that was a big decade. But I'm going to say that the 70s for sure was the better of those two. So we appreciate everybody sending in questions, and keep doing it. Al Bernstein, at Al Bernstein on Twitter, and we will continue to answer your questions. And Trip, next week we're going to be looking at our interview with Mauro Ranallo, my sidekick and partner and play-by-play man on Showtime.
That'll be a lot of fun, and that was a great interview. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. All right. Thanks to Trip. Thanks to Holt McCallany, who was our guest. And thanks to all of you for watching. We'll see you next time.